Emma never planned for this to happen. She had a good life, a stable marriage, a loving husband, and everything that should have made her happy. But something was missing, something unspoken that she couldn't quite define. It wasn't about love. She loved David. It wasn't about security. He provided everything she could ever need. But there was a fire, a spark, that had long since faded. And then there was Alex. He wasn't hers. He was David's friend, someone who had been around for years. Charismatic, confident, and effortlessly charming, Alex had a way of making everyone around him feel special. Emma had never looked at him that way before. Or maybe she had, but she had always pushed it aside, convincing herself it was nothing. Until now. It started as something innocent, conversations at dinner parties, playful jokes exchanged in passing. But lately there was something different. A shift, a subtle tension that lingered between them. She noticed the way his eyes held hers a second too long, the way he leaned in slightly when he spoke to her. And she didn't pull away. One evening, at a small gathering at her home, she found herself alone in the kitchen with Alex. David was outside, entertaining guests, oblivious to the way her pulse quickened as Alex reached past her to grab a glass. Their hands brushed, and she felt it, the undeniable, electrifying spark. "You seem different lately," Alex said, his voice quiet but deliberate. Emma's breath caught in her throat. Was she imagining this? Or was he feeling it too? She forced a smile, shrugging as she turned away. Just life, I guess.
But she knew it was more than that.
As the night went on, she became painfully aware of his presence. Every glance, every accidental touch sent a wave of guilt crashing over her. But there was also excitement, something she hadn't felt in a long time. When she caught Alex watching her from across the room, something inside her shifted. The next day, she found herself replaying their interactions, analyzing every word, every look. It was dangerous, she knew that. But she also knew she wasn't ready to stop. It didn't take long before their conversations extended beyond casual encounters. Texts that started as harmless check-ins became something more. She told herself they were just friends, that she was overthinking it. But deep down, she knew better. One afternoon, while David was at work, Alex sent a message. "Coffee." Emma hesitated. She could say no. She should say no. Instead, she found herself typing back. "Where?" As she stood in front of the mirror, fixing her hair before leaving, she knew she had already crossed a line. Maybe not physically. Not yet. But something inside her had already shifted. And there was no turning back. Emma told herself it was just coffee. Just a harmless meeting between two people who happened to enjoy each other's company. But the moment she saw Alex waiting at the cafe, something inside her stirred. His eyes lit up when he saw her, and that look alone made her pulse quicken. They sat across from each other, making small talk, but the air between them was charged with something unspoken. Every time he leaned in slightly, every time his fingers drummed against the table, she felt the weight of her own choices pressing down on her. "You seem happy," he said, watching her closely. She hesitated, swirling her coffee, pretending to be unaffected. "I am." It was a lie. If she were happy, she wouldn't be here. If she were happy, she wouldn't notice the way Alex looked at her differently from David. If she were happy, her heart wouldn't race at the thought of being alone with him. The coffee meeting turned into another, then another. Soon, they were finding excuses to see each other, running into each other at the grocery store, a quick stop at a quiet bar after work, stolen moments that stretched longer each time. Emma told herself nothing had happened. No lines had been crossed. But deep down, she knew better. Every lingering touch, every look that lasted too long, every time he said her name a little softer than necessary, it was building up to something inevitable. Then came the night that changed everything. David was away for work, and Emma had spent the evening trying to distract herself from the thoughts that wouldn't leave her alone. Then her phone buzzed. "Alex, come out for a drink. Just us." She could have ignored it. She could have chosen not to respond. Instead, she found herself standing outside the bar minutes later, searching for him. The moment she saw him, she felt it again, That undeniable pull, the intoxicating thrill of something she wasn't supposed to have. They talked, they laughed, but there was an unspoken agreement in the air. When they stepped outside, the city lights casting shadows around them, he reached for her hand.
She didn't pull away.
"Emma," he murmured, his voice low, filled with something dangerous. She should have stopped him. She should have walked away. Instead, she closed the distance between them. His lips met hers, and in that instant, the world faded. It wasn't just a kiss. It was everything she had been craving, everything she had convinced herself she didn't need. Passion, desire, the feeling of being wanted, truly wanted. But as she pulled away, reality came crashing back. She had crossed the line, and there was no way to undo it. Emma thought she could control it, that it would be just once, just a moment of weakness, and she would walk away before it became something more. But she was wrong. One kiss turned into another. One meeting turned into countless stolen moments. She and Alex were slipping further into something neither of them could stop. Every message, every touch, every whispered promise pulled her deeper into a world where nothing else mattered except how he made her feel. But secrets have a way of unraveling. David started noticing the changes. At first, it was small things, the way she checked her phone more often, the distant look in her eyes when they talked. Then came the nights when she'd stay out later than usual, claiming she was meeting friends. The excuses started piling up, and so did the tension in their home. "Is something wrong?" David asked one night, his voice calm but laced with suspicion. Emma forced a smile, shaking her head. "Just tired, that's all." But he wasn't convinced. The guilt weighed on her, but it wasn't enough to make her stop. The thrill, the passion, everything she had been missing, was too intoxicating to let go of. Then came the mistake. A message left unsent. A name that shouldn't have been spoken in the wrong moment. It was enough for David to start piecing things together. The late nights. The sudden secrecy. The way she seemed to be somewhere else even when she was right in front of him. Emma saw the shift in him, the quiet way he watched her, as if waiting for her to slip up. Then, one evening, she walked into their bedroom to find him sitting on the edge of the bed, her phone in his hand. Her heart stopped. "Who's Alex?" His voice was steady, but she could hear the pain beneath it. She opened her mouth to lie, to come up with some excuse, but the words wouldn't come. The silence between them stretched, heavier than anything she had ever felt before. "I wanted to believe you," David continued, his eyes locked on hers. "I wanted to believe this was just in my head." Tears burned at the back of her eyes. "David, I don't." His voice broke, and for the first time, she saw the full weight of what she had done. The man who had loved her, who had trusted her without question, was now looking at her like a stranger. And she knew, in that moment, there was no turning back. Emma had rehearsed a dozen explanations in her head, but none of them mattered now. The damage was done. David didn't need to yell or demand answers. His silence was enough to break her. He stood up, tossing her phone onto the bed. "How long?" She swallowed hard, but there was no point in lying. "A few months." His jaw tightened, and he let out a bitter laugh. "So, all this time, you looked me in the eye and pretended nothing was wrong." She wanted to say it wasn't like that she hadn't meant for any of this to happen, but every excuse felt hollow. She had made a choice, over and over again. David grabbed his keys and walked out without another word. The weight of what she had done came crashing down on her. She wanted to chase after him, to say something, anything, to undo the last few months, but it was too late. The next few days were a blur of silence and avoidance. David didn't ask for an explanation. He didn't fight or beg for the truth. He simply stopped looking at her the way he used to. And that hurt more than any screaming match ever could. Emma reached out to Alex, desperate for some kind of reassurance. But his response was cold, distant. "This was never supposed to get messy," he said. "I never wanted to hurt David." The words stung. For the first time, she saw the truth. Alex had never truly been hers. He had been an escape, a fantasy that had no place in reality. She had risked everything for a man who had no intention of standing by her when things fell apart. David eventually asked her to leave. He didn't yell, didn't call her names. Just a simple request. I can't do this anymore. As she packed her things, she realized she had lost more than just her marriage. She had lost the man who had always chosen her, the home they had built together, the life she had taken for granted. And for what? A fleeting thrill? A temporary high? Sitting in an empty apartment, she finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of regret. She had thought she wanted something more, something exciting. But in the end, all she had was loneliness and the realization that some choices can't be undone. She had chased a fire, and now she was left with nothing but ashes.